Hi there, and welcome to Pedagogy of Multiliteracies. Due to a scheduling conflict, I am unable to meet you all in person today. However, given the nature of this course, I'm not so sure that's such a bad thing because it forced me to be a little bit more creative and flexible in thinking about alternative ways to deliver the curriculum to you today, which is something that I'd like you to be thinking about as well. So essentially, through a combination of this presentation and my blog and everything that's posted on it for today's entry, I'm going to cover everything that was originally on the syllabus for today with one or two minor exceptions, which I will get to later. So I imagine that in many ways this will be a fairly typical first class. I'm going to tell you about who I am, and then we're going to take a look at the syllabus, which has been posted on WebCT. Now, I would have posted all of this material on WebCT, but unfortunately I don't have access to WebCT yet, so I hope you don't mind working from my blog for today. First, let me tell you a little bit about the person this disembodied voice is connected to. My name is Danica Barker, and at the risk of sounding unprofessional, I would prefer that you call me Danica. And if that makes you uncomfortable, you can call me Miss Barker. Just please don't call me Dr. or Professor Barker, because while I'm a graduate student, I am not a professor yet, and that would make me feel weird. So, this picture of me was taken this past summer at an amazing education summit in Algonquin Park, where I got to connect with some really incredible and innovative educators at an off-the-grid retreat. And I just think this is a great picture because even though we had no cell reception or Wi-Fi, I'm still holding my iPhone like it's some kind of appendage or something like that. So, a couple of other things here. On the screen, there are a few different ways that you can connect with me. So the black and white abstract looking picture at the top of the screen is a QR code. And I suspect that many of you are more familiar with that now than you would have been even a few months ago or a year ago, because you're seeing them pop up more and more now. So a QR code is kind of like a barcode, and what you can do is if you have a smartphone with a QR reader app, you can actually take a picture of that, and then it will link you to a website or a piece of text or something else. In this case, it will link you to text that gives you just all of the contact information for me. So if you don't have a smartphone with a QR reader app, no worries, you can just actually copy down what's on the screen below that picture. So you can see that I have a pretty big digital footprint on the internet, which is something that I made a conscious choice about as a teacher. And it's something that as we move throughout this course, I'll be asking you to think about as well. So I have a website, and I bought my own domain name and I created my own website, and I use that for a lot of different things. I use that as kind of the jumping off point for a number of other things that I have. For each of the classes that I teach, I have a blog, and I also have my own professional blog, which you guys access this presentation from. Then I've also included my Twitter handle, which is probably the fastest and easiest way to get a hold of me if you're on Twitter, actually. And it's at Danica Barker, so that's an easy way to get a hold of me. I'm very active on Twitter, and I use it to help me basically create and maintain a really large learning network of other teachers and people who are interested in education and technology. And then I've also included the URL to get to my Google Plus page, but I have to admit that I'm an early adopter, and so I kind of jump in right away and try new things, but I haven't really latched on to Google Plus. I might change my mind though as the year progresses. As I mentioned, I'm a grad student, but I'm also a full-time English teacher at Central Elgin Collegiate Institute in St. Thomas. I love my job. I have amazing students, and we have lots of fun studying English in a variety of different ways. Now, some of the different teaching methods that I use in class look a lot like the things that you would have done in high school English, and others will probably look very different. In a couple of these pictures here, you can see it looks like the top picture, it looks like I've got a bunch of kids who are off task and texting their friends instead of doing their work, but what they're actually doing up here is they're using apps on their phones to look at diction and levels of language in poetry. And the bottom left-hand corner, this is a bring your own device day, so I have students using combination of things like netbooks, which we do have that you can book out. We don't have a full class set of them in our school though. So some of the students are also working on iPod touches. I have 2 of my own that I lend out, but students usually have some that they could use as well. I have a couple that are using a school laptop, some are using their own laptops. And in that picture, they're actually working on writing blogs about novels that they're reading. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see it's the same kind of thing that's actually happening, but they're doing, they're preparing for their literature circle meetings, I think, in the bottom right-hand picture. And so they're actually doing that in a variety of different ways. Some of them prefer to work sort of pen and paper. Others are reading. Others are working on a laptop. Some of them are working on, you can see one of the students is working on his iPod. And so they're all working on the same task, just in different ways. Okay, enough about me and my students. Let's talk about this course. First of all, some housekeeping issues. You should know that in all likelihood, I will be here at least a half an hour before class, should you want to meet with me and discuss anything. But I don't have an office yet, so I'll have to let you know about that next week. Also, if the weather is bad, it might take me longer to get here from St. Thomas. Our classes end at 2:20 in St. Thomas, but I can't leave right at 2:20. And it takes me a good 45 minutes to an hour, actually, to get here. So it could be a little bit hairy some days. So if I can't meet with you before class, we can set up another time for a meeting. I've also been told, and you guys can correct me about this if I'm wrong, that a 5-minute break or so is standard for a 2-hour class, and that I also have to work in, I think, a 10-minute break to allow you travel time to your next class, even though in all likelihood you don't have one after this one. So I think that's a 15-minute break in total, which means that this is really an hour and 45 minutes. Now, we can take a vote next week, but if it's okay with you, I think I would prefer to probably not take an official formal break, but actually end 15 minutes early. And I mean, you're all adults, and I have no problem with you getting up and taking a break at any point when you feel you need to. So we can talk about that next week. Now for WebCT, as I mentioned, I don't have access to that yet either, but when I do, the only thing I really anticipate using it for is posting readings and submitting assignments if necessary. Since we're going to be using a lot of other tools in this course as well. I would like to continue using my blog for posting information about this class, but I understand it can be a bit of a pain to have to go to a bunch of different websites to get information, and I know that you have a number of different websites that you've been told to access as part of your course. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the syllabus in a little bit more detail, but mainly just focusing on the first couple classes, including today. So what's listed on your syllabus for today, we're covering most of it, just with a couple of variations. You will be watching the What Does It Mean to Be Literate in the 21st Century video. You won't be covering the AIRS text. We'll look at that later when we get into the comic class where we discuss comics in the classroom. I have attached the Language and Literacy Researchers of Canada position statement, so that's just for you to read to kind of give you a sense of kind of the guiding ideas for this course. And then the next part that was listed was a portfolio activity. I'll talk about the idea of your portfolio in just a moment, but all you need to worry about for this is I need you to complete the Survey of Literacy Practices, which is a Google Docs survey, but that is the one that's posted at the top of this blog post. So you just need to complete that and hit submit, and some of you have done that already. After you do that, though, I want you to think about how you would redesign this activity and share it. Be prepared to share it with your classmates on a blog. Now, I know that you don't have your blog set up yet. Don't worry about that at all. All I want you to do right now is think about how you would redesign it for students that you would be teaching in the future. Okay, so these could be students in your next practicum placement, or they could be students, in a future class that you have. And this is essentially what I've done, because I have redesigned a survey that I give to my students at the start of each year. I've redesigned it for you, so you're going to be doing the same thing, but kind of in the opposite direction. So for next class, if you could have that survey completed and your ideas for how you would redesign it for your future students, you don't have to post or share it anywhere yet. Next week, we're going to be talking about understanding literacy as being situated. What you need to have ready for next week's class is the following. So I'm going to attach the chart as a suggested procedure for analyzing texts, and if you could review that and be familiar with it. But I'd also like you to read 3 blogs by 3 educators. So these are examples of professional blogs by teachers in Ontario, and I know all 3 of these teachers. And hopefully we could actually get one or 2 of them to talk to you about their professional blogs. Because you are going to be creating a professional blog, and that's sort of the major component for this course. So I want you to get a sense of how their blogs are different, how they present themselves as educators online, and you could even think about using that chart as a method for analyzing their online texts. So next week, I would want you to come prepared with your ideas about how you would adapt and redesign the literacy practices survey for your future students. And I would also like you to come prepared with your sort of comments and observations about those professional blogs. We will discuss the planning of your professional blog in class, and I'm not sure about being able to get a computer lab for next week, so it'd be great if you have a laptop that you can bring, if you can come prepared with that. If you don't have access to that, don't worry about it, we'll figure something out. Overall, the mark distribution is as follows. So 20% of it comes from your redesign of your literacy survey, which you're going to post. 20% of it will come from analysis and class discussion. And then the rest of it is going to come from your professional blog. So as you can see on here, you're going to create a blog and you are going to post at least 5 times throughout the course. Now we can talk about specific deadlines for posting throughout the course. We can decide that together as a class. With my students in high school, we have specific deadlines for their online posts as well, because if you leave it all till the very last moment to have all 5 of your posts, it doesn't provide your classmates with opportunities to reflect on what you've written, and it doesn't really show your growth over time. So, but we can decide on the deadlines for those courses. And it's going to be fairly open-ended in terms of what you blog about and also how you blog. I'm going to give some suggested topics, but you're encouraged to collect, select, and reflect in ways that support your individual learning goals as they relate to English language arts teaching and learning. You're also going to be expected to comment on at least 5 of your classmates' blog posts throughout the course. Now, I will put together a bundle so that it's easy for you to find all of your classmates' blog posts. We'll cover all of that stuff a little bit later, but that's the major assessment component for this course. So I'm hoping that this will give you kind of an overview of what our classes will be like. Our goals are immersion in multiliteracies. That means that we won't just be talking about multiliteracies, but you'll be actually immersed in analyzing and engaging with multimodal texts. I also hope to model a variety of instructional strategies. So that doesn't mean treating you like your teenagers, but it means showing you what some instructional strategies are that you might be able to then apply in your classroom. So hopefully make it practical for you. And with my teaching as well, I try to use the gradual release of responsibility model, which is a good phrase for you to learn for future job interviews. So this is an instructional model that begins with the teacher modeling, the students doing something together, practicing it together, with the opportunity for some support and coaching along the way before you're expected to do something individually. So you'll have lots of opportunities to practice before you're expected to do something on your own. And then the other thing that I think is very important is for me to provide a lot of context for you, so that the name of this course sounds very theoretical, and I want to make sure that I'm providing real life classroom context for all of the things that I'm going to be talking about. So whenever possible, I'll give you actual examples of things that I'm doing in my classroom. And if it's not something that I'm doing, bringing in experts that I know who can talk to you about how they're doing these things in their classrooms. All right, so let's get right into it now. Let's talk about what it means to be literate in the 21st century. Now, I'll tell you that if we were in the classroom right now, here's what I would ask you to do. You're probably very familiar at this point with Think, Pair, Share, but I think it's a great instructional strategy and I use it a lot. So I would ask you to just think to yourself, what do you think it means to be literate in the 21st century? I would ask that, and I would pause for at least a minute, and it would feel long and awkward, and I'm not going to do that right now. Then I would ask you to share what you thought of with your partner, and then once you'd had an opportunity to both discuss, I would go around the room and ask a few of you to share either what you came up with or what your partner came up with. And we'll use this strategy a little bit later on, but I think it's a great one because it builds in accountability and safety. So go ahead and think about it. We're going to actually watch a video on this topic. Now, as you're watching this video, I want you to set a purpose for your viewing. So whenever I have students watch a video in class, I never just put the video in and have them watch. I give them a task that they're expected to do while they're watching. So while you're watching, I want you to think about, and you can jot this down on a piece of paper, or you could just think about it in your head. For square, think about things that squared with you, things that connected with you. You're like, yeah, okay, I get that. That works for me. For the circle that you're going to draw, these ideas are still rolling around in my head. So these are things that I still have questions about. The triangle is piqued my interest. So this is something that I find really interesting. So if you could draw those little shapes down on a piece of paper or just think about it in your head, try to think of something that really connects with you, resonates with you, something that raises a lot of questions for you, and something that piques your interest as you're watching this video.
The U.S. Department of Commerce ranked 55 industry sectors by their level of IT intensiveness. Education was ranked number 55, the lowest, below coal mining.
For the last 100 years we've used the industrial narrative. Schools are like factories, it's an administrative process, it's about control and order.
The kids are having a much more stimulating and rich environment outside of schools than they are in school.
Kids are very rich content developers today through their social networking sites. They're big communicators through email, instant messaging, and text messaging, and yet all of those things are banned from their schools.
Every turned-off device is potentially a turned-off child.
We have to accept as educators that technology is not really a choice. It has created a world. It's just not here to help you teach traditional subjects. It has invented, has emerged a completely new environment.
It's about relationship, it's about community, it's about connectivity, it's about access.
Children are living now in a different space. They're living in what I call nearly now. And nearly now is that space that they text in, that space that they update their Facebook entries in, the space that they Twitter in, the space that is not quite synchronous. Now, it's a really interesting space because it's not adversarial, it's not pressured. It's a space where people can, it's all the R words, they can reflect and retract and research and repeat, it's a very gentle word. I'll tell you what, it's a great world for learning.
If I could remodel a classroom of today, I'm not sure it would be a bricks and mortar classroom.
So the student is at the center, and school is just one of the ways and places that they learn. But they also learn through communities, at home, in museums, in libraries, and of course online.
It's about providing the best quality teachers no matter where a student lives and making those bridges.
It's wandering around the city with their cell phones and collecting data that kids will be doing outside of school.
School might be the place where you come together to do joint projects, where you social network, where you do some of the other kinds of enrichment things.
We've got a classroom system when we could have a community system.
It's about opening the door to NASA resources, to the labs that are being developed online at MIT, and connecting these students to the kinds of opportunities that will fundamentally shift their academic experience and make them better prepared not only for college but for life.
You start with the teacher. If I want my students to be making global connections, then I'm going to give the tools to my teachers first and provide them with opportunities to connect with other teachers around the world or other teachers around the country.
The task here is to give teachers a place where they can swap authentic ingredients and their evidence that those ingredients are safe and tested. Do you know that doesn't exist anywhere in the world? I've just been part of a big project that I think is going to change that and change that radically.
We have to develop a narrative that sustains 21st century learning.
If we simply apply standards, if we simply have a steady regime of standardized testing, that will make things better. When in fact, it is economically actually a foolish idea, because the jobs that these kids in school will be having do not call for this kind of right answer vending machine approach.
Now, if No Child Left Behind fades away, it enables local creativity and innovations.
They will be doing work that calls on their artistic abilities, that calls on their abilities of synthesis, that calls on their abilities of understanding the context, that calls on their abilities of working in teams, that calls on their abilities in some sense to be multidisciplinary, multilingual, multicultural.
So the coin of the realm is not memorizing the facts that they're going to need to know for the rest of their lives. The coin of the realm will be, do you know how to find information? Do you know how to validate it? Do you know how to synthesize it? Do you know how to leverage it? Do you know how to communicate it? Do you know how to collaborate with it? Do you know how to problem solve with it? That's the new 21st century set of literacies, and it looks a lot different than the model that most of us were raised under.
Now we're looking at a whole different range of schools. We're looking at schools that are producing genius, collaborative, gregarious, brave children who care about stuff like their culture. And to build schools that do that is a whole another challenge. And around the world, you know, people are testing out the ingredients of what makes that work. And those ingredients are being assembled into some just stunning recipes in different places. It's a very exciting time for learning. It's the death of education, but it's the dawn of learning. That makes me very happy.
So this is a good place to pause. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video here, and there'll actually be a second one that follows this. But what I would like you to do is I would like you to take a moment to just share what your thoughts were on that video. And so just below this video, you're going to see a link that's going to take you to a virtual corkboard where you can just type in your thoughts, and you can keep it anonymous. That's totally fine. I would just like to get your feedback in the same way that I would in a classroom about sort of what your questions, comments, observations were about that video. So we'll stop the video here. You're going to follow the link just below this post, jot down your thoughts, and then watch the second part of this video.